Well, ladies and gentlemen, how many of you here would like to have a hearty laugh after lunch? Can I see you? Yes, of course, ma'am, I know you are going to be. Yes, definitely. Okay, I just see a few hands. You don't want to laugh? None of you want to laugh? None of you? I know you want to smile, but of course. No, you don't have to pay for it. It's absolutely free. It's absolutely free, and especially for you, for all of you to have a hearty laugh. So after lunch, post-lunch, we have something very special. There's a stand-up comedian who is coming, and all of you should have great fun. So please be here, book your places and be here. Ma'am, you don't have to pay a single penny for that. You just have to be here and laugh your heart out for free, okay? So we are going to go on to the CIO panel now, and it's connecting automation to business challenges. And we have an amazing panel of speakers. The chairperson and the moderator is very sorted. He came to the backstage and said, we are all ready, we are all here. And the panelists are Mr. Sarajit, Chief Business Transformation and Digital Solution, Tata Steel. We're just doing a little bit of the setup. I'm just calling out the names so that all of you can come in. Mr. Abir Banerjee, National Business Manager, Aruba. Mr. Sanjay Prasad, CIO, RPSG CESC Power Group. And Mr. Burra Vamsi, Rama Mohan, COO of Power Grid Corporation of India. And our chairperson and moderator for this session will be Dr. Debabrata Das, Director of IIIT Bangalore. Ladies and gentlemen, put your hands together for this extremely powerful CIO panel that we're going to have now. And I will hand over the session to our chairperson and the moderator, Dr. Debabrata Das.
Thank you.
Welcome, sir.
So, good morning, everyone. And this is a panel which is leading to the automation. As you know, all this digital world has been ultimately boils down to the automations of the business. And these automations will only happen when multiple areas has to converge and then it will be successful. In this regard, I want to congratulate ABP Group for their centenary functions, and thanks to ABP for organizing such a wonderful Infocom event. And along with that, this panel, which is one of the important areas relating to the automation. I want to thank Mr. Dhruv Mukherjee and also Mr. Khalida for inviting all of us. And with the panelists, I will quickly introduce each one of them. Left side of me is Mr. Sarajit Jha, who is a Chief Business Transformation and Digital Solution from Tata Steel. And then in his left is Mr. Abir Banerjee, National Business Manager and from the Aruba and HPE. And beside him is Mr. Sanjay Prasad, who is a CIO of RPSG and CESC Power Group. And they are mainly in the, as you know, in the generation and also the distribution. And also beside him is Mr. Vamsi Rama Mohan, who is Executive Director and COO of Power Grid of Telecom Division. So thank you, all of you, for joining this group. So before I start this conversation, let me quickly bring all of you to a platform of thought process. Is that if you look at this digital world, which we all studied in our schools and also in the undergraduates, digital means we always say 1 and 0. If you look at the whole digital information, classically we call it as a 1 and 0. And if I look at this 1 and 0, this 1 and 0 is in whole information technology only in 3 states. Only in 3 states. I call them 3 C's. The first C, which was my previous speaker was talking about, Mr. Rajesh, is that the conservation of the data, where the data lies. The conservation, first C. That means my data storage, cloud, edge, and all kind of things. So second C is your computation. That means I take the data and bring it to the CPUs and GPUs for the computation, for the algorithms like machine learning, artificial intelligence, or any kind of logics we people have developed for automation, then the logics applied on those data. The third C is the communication. Without communication, information has no values. So for the automations, I need these 3 C's. So the whole networks of optical networks or the wireless networks has been invented, and still evolution is going on in this direction to meet these automations in communications. So you will not find information except these 3 states. Okay. So now I am coming to the automation. So the automation with respect to this has only 2 major parts. One, the automation due to the artificial intelligence or all the ML, DL we talked about, but it leads to something called algorithms or logics. These logics have been developed by the people from different companies and academia to solve some of the redundant activities in any business. That means if repetitive activities. So that means I can save some time, my employees can do some productive work by next value addition and innovation. So that is the part 1 of the automation. And the part 2 of the automation, for doing all these things, I need a very good infrastructure. If you must have seen in the COVID-19, there was, everybody's at home, we needed a network communications immediately. And everybody wants it to be connected securely to the office. And from the office has a background, the cloud. So all these things has to run 24/7 as we discussed, wherever I am, how much bandwidth I need without any failure. So now question comes to us that this automation to be successful, then this infrastructure has to be available 24/7 to a business and all the users and the customers. So how to get that? So this is a very critical question has been asked to us. So having taken forward to in this direction, this panel will be discussing to identify the best practices adopted by these leaders, by the change makers in their business automation process in their own organization. And also this panel will also debate and also come to you that what are the good things, practices they have done internally inside their organization for their employees, and also they also gave it to also external to their customers, then their business can run. And also what are the futuristic vision in this regard. So in this respect, I will request Mr. Sanjay Prasad, who is the CIO and also from the RPG group in CSC. And I will request him that what automations means for business in your organization, which you have been leading from the front as a CIO. And also, what benefits would you or like a customers you have brought in as if to this automation? Sir, that mic is not. Yeah. I think there's a central
control. Good morning, everyone, and thank you, ABP, for giving us this opportunity. And congratulations to the ABP family for their centenary, a large part of which many of us would have traversed in our journey over the last few decades. So I will take a reference back to the plenary where automation and digital transformation have been interchangeably used, and I will continue to take that liberty in this panel as well. And if we take a outside-in view, we'll see that in the whole power utility business would have going through three generations. We had utility 1.0, where it was the classical integrated power companies, and globally it used to be a pensioners' paradise. Then as we moved to utility 2.0 within India, we had seen a lot of unbundling of generation, transmission and distribution. With it, consumers still to a large extent remained captive, of course with limited choices in certain jurisdictions, maybe in Mumbai and Delhi. And lastly, as we now are on the cusp of deregulation, the whole concept of the last mile becomes extremely important, where not only the unbundling is there, but also the person delivering the last mile almost behaves like a retailer. And therefore, some of the concepts that we hear on how FMCG and retail works, so it goes back a little bit to my experience, where we used to see the P&Gs, Levers, and Colgate fight it off with a Walmart. So we might see a Walmart coming in, as deregulation steps in to manage the last mile of the business. And I will take again the cue from Professor. He's used 3 C's, and so we talked about what the business. Now, from an automation perspective, at least for the power business, instead of the C's, I'll advance a little further. I'll talk of 4 D's, and which I see are the drivers, of course, which are underpinned by deregulation. So first is digitalization. I won't go into each subject area because each one of them is vast, which includes sensorization of devices within the field network, and subsequently, you have applications of AR, VR, and even the digital twin is taking shape, as well as the digital assistant in the services part of the business. Then you move to decarbonize, where of course you have the EV roadmap, but more importantly, we have to look at the EV ecosystem. That means where we keep the customer centric, and we actually also develop the charging point operations, and as well as making sure that the fleet and the consumer are integrated. So those are opportunities that we see in the automation front as far as decarbonization is concerned. Of course, on the plant side, we see a lot of initiatives happening on desulfurization, as well as predictive analytics for field devices. So then, in terms of the last of the D's is what everything that we do with respect to digitalization, decarbonize, and decentralize. Decentralize is again, we talk about peer-to-peer trading, using some elements of blockchain, and using distribution energy resources and microgrids. But around all this comes a de-risk, where we need to make sure that cybersecurity plays an important role when you are wanting to have a secure IT/OT framework, as well as from a recovery perspective, have to have a good cyber insurance policy in place. So, but why do we do all this? Are we at peace using these 4 Ds? So this peace is something which each of us needs to sort of, this acronym is partners. That means we cannot do everything all on our own, and we have to work with your technology partners, startup ecosystem, and make sure that there are white spaces which needs to be fulfilled using the partner ecosystem. Then, of course, employees and assets and customers, and lastly, the environment, which is very relevant in our context, because you have regulators, as well as you have to make sure that you're doing the right thing in keeping the environment clean. And of course, it's also important from an ESG perspective. So, whatever little I have learned is, whenever you're embarking on an automation project or a digital transformation project, make sure that you are at least able to touch these two of these pivots on P, E, A, C, and E. And there all we'll be able to map your technology and adapt it to the business, because unless you do a mindful absorption, of technology, then or digital transformation, then the whole exercise is not just using IT for technology for the sake of technology. You had a point on customers. So of these 5 pivots, I will go a little bit deep into the customer piece. So if you look at the pyramid, right at the bottom, our first job is to deliver reliable, consistent power and make sure our LT and HT network uptimes are kept. We are in a position to do remote and smart connection and deconnection. So disconnection, so that's the base. On top of that, as you graduate upwards, we are looking at convenience. If you look at there was a reference made to the pandemic period. So across the pandemic period, we have engaged customers on the online environment, moving to actually doing online transactions by almost 66% between over the period of 2 and 3 years. And in terms of the next level as we move forward, that is customer experience, we had the experience of obviously delivering chatbots and WhatsApp bots, and making sure this of course has matured over a period of time. And then the next aspect as we move from experience to customer centricity is to make the customer in the center of things, where we looked at a digital voice assistant who will be able to circumvent some of the the maze that we see typically in a call center interaction, and will be able to address the customer's O's specifically with respect to no supply, voltage fluctuation, where the customer is always in a difficult mood and wanting to make sure that he hits the right spot, goes into the docket creation, integrates with the CRM, and is able to respond back to the consumer with a time frame of when the restoration is possible. And lastly, in terms of other examples of centricity is where you are able to manage most of the power utilities would have a strong GIS setup, but what is important is to integrate the consumer, the asset, and the employee who's doing the repair work in a proactive manner. So your CRM, your utility solutions, and the GIS must be well integrated and give that one wholesome feel to the consumer. So these are the layers of customer, right from delivery to centricity that we see. It's a roadmap, and within this framework, with respect to the voice bot, I need to say that we are India's first utility to have delivered a voice interaction in Indianized English, Hindi, and Bengali. And of course, there's a lot of tools that went into it in terms of speech to text, text to speech, then using SOX audio controllers, then asterisk call processing, and which didn't happen overnight. A lot of effort went in to actually mine the ecosystem. So if you look at the partner ecosystem, we had to go into startups across cities, look at large ISVs, look at OEMs, and even the big four. I'll just share an experience where while technically the POCs were successful, I had the experience of doing this POC 4 or 5 years back in an earlier organization, but it was mostly on Alexa-based English, which obviously wouldn't gel well with the consumer. So, and looking at the vernacular and Indian English, one was a startup, but we could not rely on a startup to deliver this product when we are actually engaging with 34 lakh consumers. Then we also were successful with an OEM, but the OEM went in for an acquisition by another larger OEM, and then the whole governance of that organization was in a little bit of a flux, and then we sort of regressed back. The third, finally, we were able to work with the partner, and for which the solution was deployed, and the phase 1 is working since January, And of course, the bot is still in the process of learning and making sure that as we move into more fuzzy logic, we should be able to bring on more services to the consumer. Now, your third question was more to do with the employee, very short. It was, one is, in this, from a workforce perspective, fail fast and avoidance of this fear of failure. That must be part of your, in any organization's KRA. Otherwise, the whole propensity to deliver, and you can't report saying a failure at the end of the, of the year in question. Also, there's a lot of mindset that needs to change in terms of the legacy, but legacy also needs to continue. We see legacy technology existing in bank, in the BFSI environment, but we also interject with things like, the proper IDE and API calls to make sure it works seamlessly with the tools that you bring in from a new context. So skilling and mindset change is one important aspect, and ability to work with fresh minds and domain experienced folks. So I'm not trying to get age into the picture because it's all in the mind. So I'm talking about, and they work together because you get the tools from the marketplace and do those POCs, but at the same time, the experience that you have within the organization over the years, that tacit knowledge plus the engagement is very important to make any automation project successful. So it is, while it is not a written down formula, but in most cases it works if this synergy happens between the two teams. So at this point I'll pause, and maybe if there's time I'll speak on the employees part a little more.
Thank you. And thank you, Mr. Sanjay, for your explanations. We'll come back to in the question and answer sessions. But in the meantime, let me bring in Mr. Sarajit Jha, who is a Chief Business Transformation and Digital Solution, one of the India's largest organizations. It's called Tata and Tata Steels. So I will request him that with his rich experience to organizing such a big organization, that what is the approach and the philosophy of automation evolved in that organization. And also, my second part of the questions will be, do we need human being in the loop of automation? So over to you.
Thank you. Thank you. Good afternoon to all of you. I had said initially I thought I would be saying good morning, but I think we are over 2015. That's what data does. So quickly, I think Sanjay has covered most of the parts about how do you do the partnership. He covered the 4 Ds of, how do you do, look at the decarbonization part of it, look at decentralization, and of course, de-risking as well. Let me just start backward on this story a bit. So we set out to do we are in the midst of a $2 billion transformation program. So $2 billion transformation, $2 billion has to be delivered to the bottom line of Tata Steel through yield, energy, throughput, quality, productivity, those 4-5 metrics. And in order to do that, there are many, as was being spoken, you need to collect all the data at the bottom layer. You need to make the data available for the use cases, and then you have to consume the data. I think speakers throughout the morning have rightly spoken about how the data supply chain needs to be crunched and sharpened. Right? So now, the way we went about it is, we said that, look, in order to do this, you need 3 things. You need to have a belief system. Nobody in the company should question why digital, everybody should say digital. Second, you need a capability system, which can be, as Sanjay said, a right mix of in-house and out-house. So we always look at build, acquire, rent. What talent can I build inside? What do I need to acquire? And what should I be renting from someone else? It could be now fancy terms like gig workers, half the world is work from home. And on a lighter note, I saw a meme which says, after 2 years of roaming the world, COVID has now come back to its, to work from home. So that's the second part of it, which is the capability system. And the third part of it is, what is the business system, which I talked about. It has to be key performance indicator, business link. We are in the business of making, supplying, delivering steel and services and solutions around it. We are not in the business of digitalization necessarily. Though I am happy to say that Tata Steel Industrial Consulting has been formed because we were getting a lot of requests from everybody that please help us digitalize and can we make this journey replicable. In short, this is what at least I follow. 4 Ds. Whatever is dumb, which is repetitive, you can make a pattern and you can replicate a pattern. Whatever is dear, which means expensive. Whatever is dangerous, humans should not be there. Hazards, fire, earthquakes, heights. And whatever is, so it's dumb, I talked about dirty, and I talked about dangerous and dear. Dirty, of course, when you have ESG and, dirt and bad AQI, humans should not be going there. These should go to automation. Now, whether it goes to an AI, whether it goes to a RPA, well, I think somebody's, obviously the AI here does not like me. I'm not giving him the right kind of work. It doesn't like the 4 Ds. So let me come to what the humans like, and hopefully you should clap for it, is curiosity, which only humans can ask. That AI did not ask me what I would have liked or thought about him. Whatever is critical thinking, we are able to question and challenge our own thoughts. Whatever requires care, just imagine, I know there are AI bots that can today give care, and you have seen all the Japanese dolls, comfort dolls in Japan, but I would still prefer a human being. And whatever is collaboration, we are trying to do a lot of machine collaboration. Machines can collaborate well when what to collaborate is set. Machines don't collaborate when the critical thinking of how to collaborate is to be done. So these 4 Cs and 4 Ds are where, what work should go to humans and what work should go to machines, right? And in the interest of time, I would say that answering the question of the human in the loop, we have always believed in smart assist, Google Maps. You look at the map, you can do much faster, it can predict the time. We have looked at augmented intelligence. You can have a machine which makes a recommendation like you have in our blast furnaces. We have a process brain which tells the operator, what parameters to set. The operator can choose to do that or not do that. And you can have completely autonomous, which is remove the driver from the car. We have now a core belief that it is the human with the AI which will always beat the AI and the human, individually and separately, right? And I'll just take 30 seconds to give an example how I learned this. We have, I was very passionate about a model called, ferroalloy prediction model. So in the blast furnaces, you have to add ferroalloys. And then after some time, you know whether the adding was right or not. If you have added more expensive material to get the same experience, if you have added less, you don't get the right quality. So we had a model which started predicting it. And our first idea was to beat the human being, the average operator, put the machine, match the best operator, beat the best operator. My humble learning was the best operator did not become the best operator because he was waiting for an AI to beat him. So what was the outcome? The outcome was the best operator watched the model. Whenever the model was asking him to add less, he was adding less. Whenever the algorithm was asking him to add more than the SOP, he was going by the SOP. Nobody got fired because they used the SOP. And so he was beating the model every single time. He was taking the best of the model using his simple buddhi and brains. So I think that to me, at least for the time being, settled the questions. Those of you interested in data, anything which is less than 5 minutes with today's technology that a human can do can actually be made in AI. Whether you have the use case or the business case of it is a different question. Last comment from my side is, we as a company believe that everything that we do has to have business viability, user livability, and technological feasibility at the same time. If all three are not there, if you ignore the but, you will be in the tub. Thanks. Over to you.
Thank you, so Mr. Sarajit, for bringing in the aspects of 4 Cs, 4 Ds, and also the human in this automation world, which is a very challenging because everybody thinks that things will be automated. But good aspects. So let me change my gear to a technology provider, Mr. Abir Banerjee, who is the National Business Manager of Aruba and HPE. So they have a huge experiences generally for this technology provided to various organizations and all as a OEM. Can you please tell us that these automations by these technologies will bring in efficiency to the business according to the evolution happened in your organizations for providing this kind of technology? That is my part one. And part two is that everybody is thinking of artificial intelligence for operation. Okay. So the many people present about that. So do you think that will it provide customer satisfaction, the AI by operations? So over to you, Mr. Abir.
Thank you, Professor Das. And thank you, Calcutta. Thank you, ABP. It's so wonderful to be with all of you, right? And to come back to Calcutta, the nip in the air, right? And such a beautiful environment, such a beautiful set of people. One issue that I have is that I see that the clock is inching towards zero. And most of the contents that I wanted to speak, I think my earlier speakers have spoken, right? That's the issue of being the last speaker in the panel. But therefore, let me take this gear to in a different route. See, I have been from the area of data communications, right? And one very interesting stuff that we have seen, and I think we have been always referring back to that pandemic as a cliche, but it's a reality that connectivity has never taken center stage as it has done in the past 2 to 3 years. Essentially, we started working in a hybrid environment, right? Work from home and return to office, which essentially means that the user and the user's device is anywhere. And where is the data? The data could be in the edge, it could be in the core data center, or it could be in the cloud, which essentially again means that we have moved away from that terminology, that conservative terminology of data center, of data being confined within the 4 walls of a room. We therefore call it centers of data. And therefore the point that comes is how you connect. The user is anywhere, the device is anywhere, you don't know where it is. You don't know the threat surface of the device that's getting connected to the network. And where is your data? The data is anywhere. So it's a any-to-any connectivity at what lies between is a myriad web of wires and cables from the telecom service providers. And yet we have to deliver quality, yet we have to deliver CSAT, yet we have to deliver customer experience, and we have to deliver efficiencies. Now, if we take this as the moot point, right, and that's what we are trying to address to this world, you have to bring in a significant amount of automation into this. And how do you bring in? Obviously, the only one way for me is to increasingly move or take the data towards a cloud environment, right? Because that is where you can get scale. And the other part happens to be to bring in artificial intelligence to determine the behavioral pattern of the end user or the end device, defining policies, getting the user to the network, grouping them, profiling them in such a way that they can get access to the right set of applications through the right connectivity mode. Which means that we are talking about an environment of a software-defined world, which also goes on to say that you have to remove the software or segregate the software from the hardware, right? Because unless you don't, till many years, right? I have seen this industry from the last century. The software was caged within the hardware. The moment you bring it out, you can bring scale. And this is where I would just like to, considering the paucity of time, I would just like to touch upon a very interesting aspect of how the networks, right, irrespective of whatever be the underlying connectivities that you have, needs to bring in, a degree of comfort for you. And this is where, Gartner termed a coin called AI Ops, right? Artificial Intelligence for Operations. We are now trying to introduce, see this whole gap between digital and IT had remained, right? I think it's very difficult to say that whether I'm an IT engineer or I'm a digital expert. But the fact that I'm now trying to bring in AI and ML into the networks or in the connectivity or in the technology goes on to say that can I? See, the interesting part with data is that till you don't see the data, you cannot act upon it, which also means that the data in transit needs to be introspected. And it has to be introspected at line speed, right? At wire speed. If you take it in batch modes, right? Maybe you're only being reactive, right? We are talking about proactive, troubleshooting. So one important aspect when I talk about networks or infrastructure or IT is the fact that how do you troubleshoot? How do you come out of being a manual troubleshooter to, because in a work from home situation or in a diverse environment, the IT administrator could be sitting anywhere, the users are at home, and you will get hundreds of calls on a day in, day out basis, right? Which in a normal basis, right? Pre-COVID, we were all sitting within our campuses, right? We were having access, so I can go and give that support, right? And the second part is this trusted advice, right? Whenever you have a problem, you have multiple advices. Now, trusted advice is bound to be a hit or a miss. You have to look for prescriptive insights. You have to have a situation in which the infrastructure on which you are working needs to give you those insights as the data is in transit or the data is in store. Right? This is where we bring in the AI ML or the AI ops features into the infrastructure of today, because only by doing that, you can take the automation to the next stage. When I say automation, important part is SLA. See, what we sell is infrastructure. What we deliver is outcomes. What you need is service levels. Now, if you have to track all these three, right, you have to bring in a significant degree of automation through the big data, through the data that comes into it, right? You have enough amount of data in the network. How do you analyze this data is very important, right? This is where we are trying to connect these three entities so that I can at least give you a clear picture of the security insights, of the management insights, and as the data is in transit, right, you also need to monetize. You need to know, right, who is the top talker, who is the top user, what are the... So go back to the fact that you need to analyze the behavior of an user, the behavioral patterns, and then profile them, give them a profile, give them a security contour, and then give them access into the network. And it's only that way, we can take this whole story towards an IT-OT integration because, but in the paucity of time, let me not take that. But in essence, we are saying that AI ops needs to be the next step for your day zero to day end support and troubleshooting and enhancing your IT efficiencies.
Thank you. Thank you. And quickly I will come to, because the last speaker you are, so Mr. Vamsi Mohan, who has been the Executive Director and the CEO of Power Grid. Many of us knows the India's power all across the country. They are the largest transmission company. But they have another bigger part called the digital part, which is the telecom and the optical networks across the country. So my question to you, Mr. Vamsi, is that during COVID, and everybody understood the network as Abir said, but how, as a bandwidth provider, what benefit you have brought in your users and the customers over the time as a power grid organization is concerned? And second thing, the power grid has a lot of SCADA and IT infrastructure across the country to interconnect all the operations. What kind of security you have provided for all of us to be securely getting the power? So that is extremely important from national point of view as IT infrastructure. Over to you.
Good afternoon. Thank you for the invite and thank you for your presence. The single answer would be there was no grid failure for the last, we don't remember when. So that is what we have ensured, not only in the normal period, but also during the COVID. That is what Power Grid has given. Let me put it this way: roti, kapda, and makan, which we say is the basic ingredients of basic needs for anyone. But let me put it that now we can add safely two more. That is, one is power, and the second one is communication. I'm sure without these two, we wouldn't be sitting here, and this conference wouldn't happen, and none of your activities. In fact, we are forced to switch on our mobiles also. To that extent, we are obsessed with the communication to be with us. So And it's not only power and communication, but also anywhere, as what is being said by Mr. Abir, anywhere power and anywhere communication. And to this extent, the kind of network what is required to make sure that people are not aware, are not knowing whether there is a network behind or no. Let me say you, Power Grid is the one which is having the massive network ensuring the bulk power transmission and also into telecommunications, wherein we are providing the bulk telecommunication solutions. So this particular network, anywhere network in power and telecommunications is being provided by Power Grid. We also do have the network running around the country, and with our optical OPGW, what we call, which is the overhead line. On our overhead lines, we have the safe fiber running on it, providing the highest reliability to ensure the best performance in the telecommunications sector. So this is what, apart from providing the power, we have overlaid a network for communication also to make sure that each one of you is receiving the best of the service. Not only the conductor, but we have each of the tower in itself, which we are foraying in to make sure that each tower is acting as an antenna in itself, and also we are drawing the power through a capacitive technology. So we are giving power at that location, crisscrossing the entire country. So this is another solution which we are providing, where you can host the antennas on the tower and also provide the base equipment on the tower itself and also get the power. Having said that, if we now look into these two ingredients, these are one of the very unique kind of a products what we deal with. This is the freshly brewed product. What we are seeing now here is the freshly brewed product, meaning that it is just generated now. So we are dealing with such kind of a product, and obviously the kind of protection systems are going to be the best. So the automation is always there in the system itself, the utility systems. We have the automation systems which are ingrained into it. There is no requirement. It's not a repetitive job for sure, but then it cannot be done by a human being to ensure the continuous uninterrupted power supply. The simple fuse as a child, what we have seen at our homes and all, the first kind of an automation what you can think. I mean, if something goes beyond a particular level, yes, that's going to fuse. So to that extent, we have gone ahead. So the entire protection systems are anyway automated. Power Grid has not only ensured that the grid is stable with the latest technologies of intelligent electronic devices and the latest protocols in the system, but also has provided a communication network for itself to ensure that this particular protection system is running healthily. This is the same communication which is providing the highest availability of the power sector, which is served to the consumers also, meaning that what we are consuming is the one what we are serving you. So the highest reliability of telecommunication is also coming up from the highest reliability of the sector at the transmission level. And during COVID,
so
I'm sure...
can I just stop you, please, because we're really running really short of time, sir.
Sure.
So, yes, sir.
Sure. The problem is 4x100 meter relay race. We expect the last person to run faster and win the race, and I am given the opportunity to that. Okay. Yeah. No. I still do take that, and I say thank you for that. And during COVID time, I'm sure each one of you must be appreciative that your communication was running and there was no interruption in the power supply. Thanks to all the distribution utilities, it cannot be done by one entity. It is the entire network which has been doing. We have come out safely out of this just because we were engaged, because power was available at your residences, at your there was no office obviously, and it was communication also was given uninterrupted. And as regards security, sir, we are the nodal agency to ensure security for all the transmission sector in the country, and we are getting into the Power Grid Teleservices Limited also. We have already incorporated it, wherein we want to have a focused approach upon the communication part, and we are foraying into data centers given the quantum of power requirements. So we position ourselves to get into the data center business, also apart from the telecommunication services what we provide. Okay. Thank you so much, ma'am. Thank you. Thank you for the delay.
Thank you, and let us give a big hands of applause to all the panelists for their sharing their rich experiences with us. And the one from the Tata Steel, who has the largest congregations to run with the automations and future plans. Technology providers, one of the largest technology providers, and the OEMs. And both of them complement each other. One is transmission and another is power distributions and also generations. So thank you very much for these talks, and over to you, madam.
Thank you very much, sir. I'm so sorry I had to cut you off because we have 3 sessions before lunch. I'd like to request Mr. Somnath Guha, Vice President, Production and Engineering, ABP Private Limited, to kindly come forward and present mementos to our panelists and our chairperson and moderator. Thank you, Dr. Debabrata Das. Thank you very much for this interesting session on connecting automation to business challenges. Mr. Sarajit Jha. Thank you, sir. Mr. Abir Banerjee. Thank you, sir. Mr. Sanjay Prasad. Thank you very much, sir. And Mr. Burra, Vamsi, Rama, Mohan. Thank you very much, sir. My apologies for cutting this session short, but a big round of applause for this CIO panel. Thank you, sir. Thank you, gentlemen. I request you to kindly take your seats in the auditorium.